And today we're going to speak about new feature coming with Vue 3. It's a composition functions. But before we speak exactly about composition functions, I want to give you an important warning. When we first introduced composition functions, at this moment it was named function-based API. In the new RFC, we did a huge mistake. We put this sentence here. Progressively migrate away from deprecated options until eventually switching to the standard build. And if people can read something wrong, they will read something wrong. There was a word here that created a huge noise on Reddit. This word was, guess what? Deprecated. Do you know how people on Reddit have read it? Current syntax to be deprecated. Composition functions will eventually be the only way to build Vue components. And it's not a fault of Reddit users, it was our fault. And if you want to read this story and to learn how it went out, there is a great article, Vue Darkest Day. And I was really surprised in the morning today because I met an author of this article, Daniel Elkington, and he's here right now. Daniel, if you're here, just wave. And thank you for the article, it was really amazing. So, please, keep in mind that composition API is purely additive. I don't want to create another wave of noise on Reddit, okay? So it's purely additive, it's a new feature, we are not going to replace the current syntax. We just want to add something new for advanced cases. With this, I can introduce myself one more time. My name is Natalia, and I'm a Google developer expert in web technologies. I'm a Vue.js core team member, focusing mostly on writing documentation and developing Vue CLI. And I work as a senior front-end engineer at GitLab. So the first and the most logical question, new API. Why do we need it? We said we want to deprecate some functions from the current API, and it created a huge pushback. So why do we need a new one? Maybe old one works just good as intended. Let's take a look at an example. And I will introduce you to this amazing app named CatExplorer. It's just a simple app for searching and sorting cat breeds. Why cats? Because I just like cats. So if we try to search, there will be search. It's really slow because of the internet, but still here, and there is a sorting. So we have two features. First one is search. And there is a source code with the current option syntax of the Vue for the search. If you're not familiar with Vue, no worries. I will quickly explain what's going on here. Can anyone read the code? Okay. So for search, we need a query in our reactive data. So data property is responsible for making data reactive. We need a query, and we need to store results somewhere, right? So we have an array for results. And obviously, we need to run the function to search. And this is run_search, which just contains an Axios call. Nothing fancy, just one feature. But we also have sorting. And here things start to become a bit complicated. Because with sorting, we add some more reactive state for sorting options and selected option index because we need to track what actually option is selected. And we have a computed property. If you're not familiar with Vue computed, you can think about it as a getter. So we have some reactive data, we perform a calculation on them, and we're taking them with computed. And combined with one component, we have a structure like one component, two features. And let's take a look, how does it look in Vue component right now. Don't try to read the next slide. I will just show the structure. You read the code on the previous ones. So here are highlighted parts for the search. And these are highlighted parts for the sorting. With Vue component, we have a grouping by an option not by the feature. And if you're trying to follow one functionality, you will be jumping between different parts of the component, between data and methods, and compute it for every single piece of the logic. As you can see, it's really fragmented right now. So how to compose reusable fragments? How to reuse the logic with a view? Do we have any options right now in Vue 2? Well, yes. So let's start to look at these options. Option number 1 is Mixins. In Vue, mixin is just a simple object that can contain any options Vue component can contain. So like data, methods, computed, everything. And when included in the Vue component, mixin options are mixed in the component options. So it seems kind of logical to put all the search logic to one mixin and all the sorting logic to another mixin. Okay, let's make it so. We just take everything from search and we create a breed search mixin, just an object with two properties, data and methods. And we create a breed sorting mixin, where we have sorting options and computed with sorted results. And if we include both mixins to the component, it will look like this. More grouped, right? No more fragmentation. Everything is good. But the question is mixin really reusable? We put the method with an access call to the static endpoint. What if I want to search dogs instead of cats? No way. This mixin will work only for cats. We have a static sorting options in sorting mixin. So if I want to sort by another option, no way again. Mixins are not reusable. Second part is their conflict prone. When you mix in the options from the mixin to the component, if you have a naming conflict, this option will be overwritten. And it's really unsafe to use them. And third one is my favorite. It's unclear source. At my own work, I have components where 5 mixins are included. And trust me, it's kind of a hell to find out what method is from which mixin and where can I find it to refactor. So mixins are not really covering all the things we need for reusable logic. What else do we have? Scoped slots. This one is more advanced, and I will try to explain it in details for those who don't know Vue, because scope slots is kind of advanced technique even for experienced Vue users. So generally speaking, scope in Vue, slot in Vue, is just a space in the child component where you can place the content from the parent component. It's a very basic explanation. It's just exactly a slot. This content will belong to the parent scope, and it will use parent component properties, but physically it's located in the child component. Scoped slots. Scoped slots are a bit more complicated, but the main idea of the scoped slot is sometimes you need some data from the child component to be exposed to this content in parent component that is placed between opening and closing slot tag. So right here, in this scoped slot, we're exposing some object breed search that belongs to the generic search child component. And we're trying to use breed search query in the parent component. So let's try to implement the search logic with a scoped slot and to see how it works. So this is the code of the generic search component. As you can see, we're passing some function getResults as a property here, and it's more usable than for Mixins because we don't have anything about access here. It's just some function we passed from parent. We are running it in the method part, and we are storing the results of this run to actually the results of the child component. And we have a setter that just sets this query to the past value. The template for this component is really small because it doesn't have any own HTML text, it just has a slot. And we are exposing every single property of the child component to parent. And in the parent component, we simply have an object breed search with these 4 properties I've just mentioned. And we're using them on the input field. As you can see, there is value and input. And for those of you who know Vue and wonder why not vModel, vModel is two-way data binding for Vue. So you can have not value and input, but just vModel directive. vModel doesn't work on scoped slots. I've tried. So this one is better. It's more abstract. We can pass function, but is it really good? In fact, it has its own cons. First one, it's not flexible. Why? We used this breed search from child component. The issue is breed search object that we used will be only available on runtime, and it will be only available in the scope of this component. I can't just create a method or compute it using breed search in the Vue parent component. Why? Because it's available only runtime. And it's less performant because we're creating a stateful component for every single part of the logic. And stateful components will create Vue component instances, which is less performant even than Mixins. So no, this is still not a perfect case for reusing logic. So what's the option? That was the main inspiration for creating a Vue composition API. Previously, it was known as Vue function-based API. Now we name it composition, and I hope it will go to release with this name. But I can't promise, because it's still in the development. And I believe the composition API can be the best explained by doing. That's why we're going to demo part. And please, be forgiving, because I still have a jet lag, and if I'm doing something dumb, don't hesitate to yell and say, hey, you forgot a comma there, because this could happen. OK, let's go to the IDE. And again, is the code readable? Nope. Let me make it a bit bigger. Better? OK, if you can read it there behind, I will go. OK, awesome. Thank you. So there is a code for our cat explorer. Let's try to refactor it to use new composition API. And if you wonder how I'm going to do this, because Vue 3 is not even released, we just created a small library named Vue composition API, actually, that you can use in Vue 2 to play with this new feature and to understand if you need it, how to implement it, and how to migrate to it. It's not that performant as it should be in Vue 3, so please don't put these to production. It's just to take a look at the new feature. And I will use it here in this demo. So first step is let's try to refactor our search to the composition function. For this, I've created these 2 files. We will start with the search, and you can see I'm already added an import from the composition API. So what do we have for search? As you remember, we have 2 data properties here with an object breed search, its query, and results. What else? We have a method running an API call. And we are running this method when component is mounted because we want to load the first cats. So let's start with creating a composition function. I will name it useSearch, and for those who came from React, I think this syntax is kind of familiar. Yes, it's kind of hooks. So let's first create the reactive state, because what we need is 2 reactive options. And for create a reactive state outside of Vue component, we will use a helper from View Composition API named reactive. Sounds intuitive. So I will create a const search state, which is reactive object with two properties, query and results, which is an empty array. Next step is we need somehow to run this method, and obviously I don't want to pass the whole Axios call and to move it to search. I just want to have some abstract function I'm going to run. This function should return a promise, and resolving this promise, I want to store anything this function will bring me to results. So I'm going to pass it as a parameter. Oh my God, what's with my typing today? And I will create a run search function that will just run get results, taking search state query as a parameter, and then we will have a response, and we want to set search state results equal to this response. Okay, now we have our method transferred. What else? We had mounted hook to run this method. Within the composition function, we can also access lifecycle hooks of the view component. So we will just add onMounted here, and we will run it with the composition function. Nothing more, we're just going to run search. And now it's time to finally include everything we have in the composition function to the view component. So we will return our search state and run search. We don't need to return mounted hook, it will be run automatically. So let's go back to our component and import our useSearch function here. Let's use search. And let's start adding the functionality to our options syntax. The good thing about new API is you don't need to refactor your component immediately and completely. You can include parts of composition functions to your familiar options syntax. So I'm calling a setup here. And setup is a new hook included by composition API as well. And I'm going to access everything useSearch is returning to me in this function. So I will have, again, search state and run search. And to get them, I need to run, oh my God, not user info. I need to run useSearch and pass a method to it. The method that will be run as run search. So it will be a function, and I will move the calculation for endpoint here, because we have this computed property and we don't need it anymore. And I'm going to run this Axios call, just slightly changed. First of all, I need to return it, because I'm expecting the promise. Instead of this breed endpoint, we just have our endpoint. Instead of breed search query, we have our query from the passing. And then we don't need to set anything. We will just return a filtered result. And important moment, if we want to use these properties from the composition function in our template in the logic of the view component. We need to return them from the setup function. Actually, it's one of the cons for composition functions, because you can imagine if you're exposed a lot of properties from the composition function, you will need to return them all. So return statement will be really, really verbose here. We have some ideas how to deal with this. Maybe adding some ID extension or Babel plugin, creating a return automatically, but so far, you need to return everything by hand. So right now, we have search the state and run search, and let's try to use them. Oh, and this is not going to work. And by this, I mean literally this. Because setup function has no access to the view component instance with this keyword. To access this, we will need to have some parameters passed to setup. First parameter is props. We don't have any props here. And second is context. And like, I added Axios to the view prototype previously. Don't do this. I did it completely for the sake of the talk. Adding something to view prototype is not the best practice. If you do this, don't do this. But this time I added it to view prototype, and to access anything you have on view prototype that you usually access with this and $, we will have context root. So let's try to use search state and run search in our component logic. So here was an input where we added query, and right now it's search state query. On key up enter, we will run search. And let's try to remove everything we don't need anymore. So get rid of breed search, breed endpoint, and the whole method here, and mount it as well. We still have breed search results passed to order by, because we need to sort something. Right now it will be just search state results. And you see I'm taking search state with this keyword because sorted results is not within the composition function. It's within the old options API, and it will access view instance with this. Search state returned by setup is put to this component instance. Okay, let's see if we fail. Let's go back to the browser. Of course we do. Oh, it's even more interesting. It's internet disconnected. Like, if you're downloading NPM modules right now, please stop. Let me check if Wi-Fi actually works. Doesn't seem to. If anyone has an internet connection to share with me, I owe you a GitLab sticker afterwards. Oh, who's this with the iPhone? What's the name of the connection? Okay, oh, I have it in the connection, yeah. Just need to find it. Nope, I don't. Let me try it one more time. No, Wi-Fi is not going to work, so any volunteers? Oh, Amir with a connection. Doesn't see my... Okay, which is your one? Bradley's, thank you. And you can just enter. So you're a co-speaker now. Hey, thank you so much. I will download huge cat pictures with your iPhone. I'm sorry. Surprisingly, I didn't fail with the code. It was an internet connection. So, okay. Yeah, you see, search works. Hey, huge cat pictures. I'm sorry again. One more time, just to make sure I used all the connection. Okay, search works. What about sorting? Sorting is taking results from search function, and it still works. So we didn't ruin anything, and we refactor search the composition function. Good. Do we have enough time to refactor sorting the composition function as well? Yep. Okay. Do we have enough? Okay. Okay, more live coding. More cats. So let's look what do we have for sorting here. We have options. Okay, we are not going to store them within the composition function because it's hard-coded one. We will just pass it. We have selected option index and some computed. And we have Lodash. And I start with moving Lodash to composition function. So here is sorting. And let's create use sorting. So again, export default function use sorting. This one is slightly different because we're going to pass two data parameters and we are going to store them immediately to the reactive state of this composition function. So I need an input, which will be an array we're going to sort, and I need options. And I'm going to create sorting state, which is again a reactive object, and I will just store input and options here. And you can see I'm not storing a selected option index in the sorting state because I want to show you another concept for making data reactive, which is called ref. So I will create selected option index, which is a ref of 0. First of all, what is a ref? And what it is doing under the hood? Ref is kind of similar to reactive, but reactive takes an object and converts every property of this object to reactive prop. What is doing ref? It's taking a primitive, like here, and it will convert it under the hood to the object with one property named value. And this property is going to be reactive. Why do we need this? Two ways of doing things. People will probably mess reactive with refs and mistake. In fact, we need them because if you try to destructure the sorting state object, if you try to access any property of it with a destructuring or spreading, they will lose reactivity. When we destructuring the reactive object, we will need to use helper to convert every single property to ref. It doesn't mean you're going to use refs often and direct, like I'm doing this, but you will need to understand what ref is and how it works, because computed will be also returning a ref. The main thing you should remember about refs, that this is an object with a value property. So when you're trying to use the value of selected option index, it will be selected option index value if you're using it in the composition function. In the template, I will show it later, we have an automatic unwrap. But let's move further so you will see how refs are used and how they work. And we need sorting output. Which will be a computed, like in the app view. So it's kind of a getter. We're going to perform a calculation over input and options and return something, and over selected option index as well. And right now, computed here, if you're familiar with Vue, it will be, again, a function. And I will just copy-paste the code from the component and change it slightly. So no more this. There will be only sorting state. And no more result sorting here. we're going to use selected option index value because it's a ref, and I've just mentioned it's an object with value property. And I'm going to use an input here, not just an input, but sorting state. See, I'm doing dumb things. Nobody noticed. We're going to apply an order by method to sorting state input and selected option. And now we will need to return everything. The only thing I really hate about composition functions is these return statements. That's sorting output, sorting state, and selected option index. I will just copy paste all of them. And let's go back to our component and import our use sorting here. Not search, sorting. So we will have again constant with these properties, which is a result of use sorting call. And we need to pass input. And input here is computed as well, because we need to react to any change to search state results. If we change the search state results, the sorting should react to this change. That's why we need to compute it here. So it's search state results here. Why computed is not defined. Okay, let's just copy paste it. It should be an author import, but for some reason it didn't work. So we will just import it here. And we need to pass options. And we can simply copy paste this static array from here. Now I can delete data and compute it as well. And I need to return all these options back to view component. Let's go back to the template and chain them respectively. So it's sorting state option, select, and you can see we're using selected option index here without value, because for template we did an automatic unwrap. And here we have sorting output. Okay, let's go back to the browser, and we are going to fail now, I think. Let's check. I mean, this is weird. Why am I not failing? Okay, let's check if search works. Good. If sorting works. Good. Wow, this is an achievement, like. Thanks. Never happened to me previously, like doing live coding correct from the first try. So if you'd like to play with this API, I made a short link, but you can search with the View Composition API. And I think it's a great idea to play with it. And let's have a last look at what we have here. So we have use search, and the whole search functionality is here. The whole sorting functionality is here. And they are moved to the respective files. On the other good hand, if you ever worked with a VS Code with Mixins and you tried to access Mixin method, it wasn't going to work. Right now, if I don't know what selected option index is, I can just go here. If I don't know what use sorting is, I can just check the signature and know what it's expecting. Of course, it has its own cons. I mentioned the verbosity of the return statement, probably an overhead of refs, because right now we don't have best practices when to use reactive, when to use ref. The main recommendation is use reactive whenever you need reactive state, and use two refs if you need to destructure. And if you want to take a look at different approaches of abstracting logic, I've added this demo with gets. It has like 4 branches, basic one, Mixins, slots, and composition API. And thank you.
Thank you very much, Natalia. So we're out of time, so we can't have any questions on this session, but I think you'll be around later on if anyone wants to have a chat.
Absolutely. You can find me probably at coffee breaks and lunch and ask your questions. Thank you one more time.
So you may remember earlier that I talked about a schedule change. That was just to see if you were awake. The schedule change has been reversed. So just to be clear, we have Jennifer Wong talking about translating React in the Iron Man room now. Phil Nash's talk on web sharing is web caring will be on at 12. And coming up in here, we've got Mike Ryan talking about the complexity management with NGRX in just a couple of minutes.